Jessica Berman, Commissioner of the NWSL, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Where I want to start, probably the biggest thing in the news is Trinity Rodman. Obviously, her signing a new deal, finding a way to keep her in the National Women's Soccer League. How important is that to the league to continue on the trajectory it's going?
Well, we always say that it's our vision to be the best league in the world,
Yeah.
and in order to be the best league in the world, you have to have the best players, and Trinity is obviously among the best players in the world, so we're incredibly excited that she chose to come back to the NWSL and to play for the Washington Spirit. If you haven't been to Rowdy Audi, you should, because the people in that building love and appreciate Trinity more than anyone I could imagine, any stadium anywhere in the world. So we're excited to see her take the field in March when we launch the 2026 season.
So you mentioned, obviously this goal of remaining and increasing your lead as the most talented league in the world. When you think about the future of player spending, obviously there are great American players who've gone overseas, Naomi Girma or Alyssa Thompson. How do you think about what you can do from a player spending perspective to keep those players here, to keep developing players wanting to come to NWSL as a destination league?
Well, I think two things. First, it's recognizing that compensation is only one component of how players make decisions, and that's not to minimize the importance of compensation. Obviously, we know that's a driving consideration for a lot of players, but there's a lot of other pieces to the puzzle when players are deciding where to play. And some of those things include the training environment and having invested in the NWSL more than any other league in the world in purpose-built training facilities, having professionalized stadiums, some of which in our league, only place in the world that have been purpose-built for women, investing in coaches and consistency across all of our clubs, top to bottom, on the table, so that when players come to the NWSL, they know that the games are worth playing because anyone can win any game. And those are the considerations that I hear when I go on my listening tour and talk to some of the best players in the world, whether they're in our league or overseas. And so we're going to continue to invest in all of those pieces to the puzzle to make sure that we're an attractive value proposition for players when they're making their choice, because we know that soccer is different from every other sport. Unlike the NFL, where if you're a top American football player, you're going to play in the NFL. If you're a top soccer player in the world, it's a global labor market for talent on the men's side and on the women's side, and it requires that we stay on our toes to be competitive.
Well, to that point, one of the key things with franchises and unlocking this growth is kind of this arms race for facilities. It's hard for a lot of them to build stadiums, and we'll talk about Kansas City in a moment, but what can you say about kind of building these first-in-class facilities, how essential that is to the growth and kind of the ways that teams can, get bang for their buck, whether it's monetizing, the naming rights or this or that?
Look, it's no different than the difference between owning a house and renting a house. When you are an owner, you have agency over how it's designed and the features that fans can engage with so that it's the right kind of environment from a fan experience perspective. It means that you have access to all of the ancillary revenue streams, whether it's parking or concessions or other merchandise that you might be selling. And when you're a tenant, some of those things end up being limited. And so from that perspective, as a business owner, where it makes sense, I understand why an owner of a professional sports team, whether it's in the NWSL or any other league in the world, might want to invest in building their own facility. But it isn't the only way to build a first-class franchise and to set up a business in professional sports for success. There's plenty of examples of situations in our league where our teams are not in a purpose-built women's soccer-specific stadium that are successful. And one of them, like for example, would be Audi Field, where we're a tenant. And it's incredibly successful, and it takes work to make sure that you're curating the kind of relationship with those who own and control the building to make sure that you're able to build your business the way you want to.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when I sat with Michelle Kang, she said to me verbatim, I'm not a real estate developer, and does Washington, D.C. really need more stadiums? But conversely, what Kansas City has accomplished really kind of changed the game for the league. And I know that Denver is coming in and has plans to build a stadium. Do you feel like the future, though, even though right now it's not necessarily defined by a stadium for every single team, the long-term future is you want to get all your teams a building of their own?
I don't think it is the long-term goal to have every single team have their own stadium, because it's dependent on the facilities and infrastructure that exist in a particular market. market. And from our perspective, what matters is that the stadium where they play their games is professional and appropriate for female athletes to be able to thrive and for our fans to be able to enjoy the National Women's Soccer League. And so there will be situations where we believe it's the right decision to invest in building infrastructure. Obviously, we have Kansas City, the first ever purpose-built stadium for women. We're building a stadium in Denver. We're building a stadium in Boston. But there will be other situations for future expansion where that isn't the right decision for us, and we'll have to evaluate each circumstance on a case-by-case basis.
How are you thinking about expansion going forward? What's your pie in the sky number of teams, and what kind of timelines are you considering in terms of getting there?
Whenever I think about expansion, I think about the size of our country and the number of cities that can support a professional team. When we look across other professional sports leagues in America, we know that they are all in and around 30 teams, and that's because of the demand for the product and the number of cities that are large enough to be able to support having a professional sports team. Obviously, we're going to be 16 teams in 2026. We've already granted Team 17 to Arthur Blank in Atlanta, which will come in 2028, and we definitely are ambitious in our vision of continuing to scale and grow. Whether and when we end up at approximately 30 teams will be something that we continue to evaluate, and we don't have a prescriptive timeline for how we will get to that number, but it is something we'll continue to evaluate to make sure that we're sort of leaning into the geographic footprint that exists across America, which is different than any other country where soccer thrives. The number of cities that exist in the US is so different from any other country in the world that support professional soccer.
No, and it makes total sense. I guess kind of with where expansion is right now, how are you thinking about valuations in the league? Obviously, they're rising. We've seen some pretty incredible sales of late, but I'm wondering about how you're thinking about where things are at and where you want to be in terms of the average value of teams.
Yeah, I mean, we want to continue to scale the business and support the revenue growth that will command the increase in franchise valuations, and that's what we've done over the last, call it 3 to 4 years. We obviously sold Atlanta in November for $165 million. Teams were selling 4 years ago for less than 10. And that's pretty incredible, and I think so long as we continue to do the right things to build the foundation of the business, we'll be able to continue to drive growth in franchise values, which will in turn unlock increased and incremental investment from owners.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Atlanta because you bring in an owner like Arthur Blank. Obviously, lots of deep pockets. We've seen a lot of the teams in NWSL now have either limited partners or kind of control owners come in that have deeper pockets. What does this new class of ownership do for you as you enter the next phase of the league?
When I look back on my career in professional sports, the thing that has made the difference in all of the professional sports league success is having blue chip ownership who not only have the resources but the desire and vision to invest in the product. And it's the reason not only we've been excited about people we've brought in through expansion, but we've actually sold 9 of our teams in the last 3.5 years, and that was intentional because we knew there was high demand for investing in the NWSL, and that when people like Carolyn Tish and her family want to invest, and people like Mark Wilf, who owns the Vikings, wants to invest, and obviously Arthur Blank and Willow Bay and Bob Iger and the Ricketts family in Chicago. There's just so many across our league that have really raised the standard and helped us to define our vision and really materialize our vision to be the best league in the world.
I can't believe we're in 2026 already, but what that means is that the NWSL is getting closer to the next media rights package. I'm wondering, what's your expectation for that? You had a tremendous step up going from the last one to this one. Are you thinking like similar exponential growth, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, well, this media rights cycle was really our first proper media deal. We were able to obviously achieve incredible investment from our media partners, but as importantly, we were able to scale our distribution and reach more than 20 million people across our season last year. And that was the single biggest accomplishment of our new media deal, was to be able to put our games in front of the people who could be our potential fans and really be in a position to capitalize on that. And I think we're going to continue to do that. Obviously, we're going into the third year of our 4-year deal,
Yeah.
and so we are excited to discuss with our current partners continuation with them, but also continue to understand the landscape and the marketplace to make sure that the NWSL is positioned for success.
Yeah. Now, outside of kind of the anchor national media rights, are there any other areas of growth that the league can really like seize? I mean, a lot of, take MLS teams for example, have really steered into premium seating or kind of enhanced sponsorship. Are any of those kind of playing a factor in kind of the growth overall?
Yeah, sponsorship at the league level.
Yeah.
We've actually grown league revenue and sponsorship by almost 50%
Wow,
from
okay.
24 to 25, so over the course of 1 year. And we brought in blue chip partners like AT&T and ELF, who have really helped to really build the business case for us in growing and scaling the league's brand. And so we're very excited about those platforms that we've built out with them, which we believe will help us to reach new audiences and to feed the flywheel of fandom, which are the things that will help us to become what we aspire to be, which is a league as successful as the NFL one day.
Yeah. How are you thinking about the role of institutional capital going forward, considering that private equity is now becoming a pretty significant presence in almost any professional sports league?
Well, I'd like to say we were a first mover in this space. You know, our DNA at the NWSL is to be innovative and to lean into growth. And we brought in Sixth Street as a control owner back in 2022. Obviously, they came into the league in 2024. They own the team here in the Bay Area, and they've been an incredible value add to our collective ownership group and to our boardroom. We obviously have institutional capital on the cap table in other places like Carlisle and Arctos, and that type of capital is a catalyst for growth, and I think it's an important component of the overall picture as we think about investment and how we continue to scale what's going to be required for our league to grow in these next 5 to 10 years.
Just because, you know, this is a recent change for MLS that they're looking to make, they're flipping their calendar. They're kind of aligning with the European competition calendar as opposed to the calendar year. Do they making a move like that? Do you think about similar types of things rearranging? I mean, obviously, it'd be great if all of soccer was one calendar around the world. Right now, because NWSL is, you know, the best league in the world, maybe you don't have to think about Europe where MLS did, but does that make you think about that change in any way?
I think it's one of the considerations we look at, which is what they decided to do, but we are always evaluating the calendar. I always say in the sport of soccer, you can't talk about soccer without talking about the calendar because of the intersection and interplay between national team competitions and professional leagues. It's unlike any other sport in the world because we have to have a symbiotic relationship to make sure that the players are supported in being able to perform for their countries and their clubs. And so we're always looking at our role in that broader ecosystem and making sure that our footprint, our schedule footprint, our competition fixtures are set up to be able to support the growth of the overall league and to the overall business around women's soccer. And so we're continuing to look at it, and I think it's something that we'll continue to evaluate moving forward.
Before I let you go, we share a mentor in the great Stan Fischler. I just want to ask you, how has Stan impacted your career?
Oh, Stan Fischler was one of my first bosses. I had the privilege of working for him when I was a student at the University of Michigan. He taught me the value of a comma, he likes to say, and I would tend to agree. As a writer, as someone who, you know, not me being a writer, but him being a real writer, he's a lover of language and believes that you can communicate with words things that have such an impact on people, and he really made me appreciate that working for him. I consider him a mentor, a friend. I feel so blessed that I could still have him in my life, and you know, I just continue to follow and be amazed at how much he's still doing. I don't even know how old he is. I think
mid-90s.
I think he's in his 90s and as sharp as a tack. I had the benefit of being able to see him in Israel back in June of 2024, and just want to see him continuing to have an amazing impact in the sport of hockey.
Jessica Berman, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.